They skipped my 30th birthday because your brother needs the money for his car. I smiled, said nothing, and learned to drive myself out of their lives. Months later, I watched their golden son leave them drowning in debt. Turning 30 didn't scare me. What scared me was the feeling I had a few weeks before it, like something heavy was coming. And I couldn't quite name it yet. I grew up in a family where my brother Jake was the center of everything. It started small, extra slices of cake staying up later than me. He's just a boy type stuff. But over time, it evolved into something uglier. I was the responsible one, the helper, the one who didn't need attention because I had it all together. And Jake, he was the baby. Even when he turned 21, dropped out of school, crashed 2 cars, he was still there, golden boy. And I was just reliable, Monica. My husband, Eric, asked me in early March what I wanted to do for my 30th. I said I wanted to keep it small, dinner, some laughs, maybe a fire pit at his parents' place. But what I really wanted deep down was to see my parents. I thought maybe they'll surprise me this year. Maybe they'll show up. Maybe this birthday they'll choose me. So I called my mom. I didn't ask for a gift. Didn't even ask for dinner. I just said, I'd love to see them, and maybe we could do cake or just spend the evening together. She said they wouldn't be able to make it. Not just her and Dad. None of them. Because, and I quote, "Car is acting up and we're helping him fix it this month. It's costing more than we thought." I sat on the edge of our bed after that call, holding the phone like it was going to offer more answers. I said, of course, I understood. I didn't argue. Guilt trip. I smiled, said it was okay, and hung up. And I made a decision that night. I celebrated my birthday with Eric, our daughter Laya, 2 of my closest friends, and Eric's parents. There was pizza, a ridiculous unicorn, cake, laughter that didn't feel forced, and a weird lightness I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the disappointment of being overlooked. I'd set it down and the people around me saw it. They didn't say much, but I knew they knew. Eric, especially. After the cake, when Laya had gone to bed and the wine had set in, I told them what happened. What they said, every one of them, was some version of, you don't have to keep doing this to yourself. Let them miss you. That night, I finally started to listen. I didn't call my parents the next morning like I normally would. I didn't check in with Jake to see how the car was. I let the silence sit. Went by and the silence remained. And then things started to shift. It was subtle at first. A missed call here. A text about, "Hey, are you around?" My mom. I ignored them. Messages got more direct. Jake had spent $900 on some stupid LED light kit, and then needed more money for tires. He'd maxed out their credit card. He was trying to trade in the car for something newer, but didn't qualify. And then a phone call I didn't answer, but will never forget. Voicemail. "Monica, we're a little overwhelmed right now. Could you talk to your brother? Maybe help him get on a better track. He listens to you." I laughed out loud. For the first time in years, the absurdity hit me. He listens to me. Since when? I didn't call back. They had spent so many years pretending I didn't need them that they actually believed it. And now, when the golden sun was driving them into chaos, they looked for the one person who always fixed things. But I had stopped fixing. I had started driving in a direction they couldn't follow. It was almost 3 months after my birthday when they were Groot showed up. No call, no warning, just a knock at the door on a Sunday afternoon while I was folding laundry and Eric was outside helping Wyla paint the fence with water and a giant brush, like it was the most important job on earth. I opened the door and saw both of them, my parents, standing there like they just dropped by on the way back from church. My mom had that tight smile she used whenever she wanted something but didn't want to admit it. My dad looked tired, not just physically. He always looked tired, but defeated in a way that made me pause for a second before stepping back and letting them in. We sat down in the kitchen and I didn't offer coffee or snacks or anything. I just waited. My mom started with small talk. How was Laya? How was work? I answered in monosyllables until she dropped it. It was Jake. Money from a friend to try and flip a motorcycle he found online. Out the bike was stolen. The friend wanted his money back. $2,500. And Jake didn't have it. Neither did they, because they were already paying off the tires, the credit card, and now some other mess he got into with overdue rent after getting kicked out of yet another apartment. They said very calmly that they thought maybe Eric and I could help. Just a loan. Just something to get them through this rough patch. I said, no. That was it. One word. No justification. No anger, just no. My mom blinked like she didn't hear me. Looked like he expected it. She started talking again about family, about how Jake was young and just needed support. I stopped her mid-sentence and asked if they remembered my 30th birthday. They both looked confused, like I was bringing up ancient history. I reminded them I didn't ask for anything except their time. I reminded them they said they were busy because of Jake's car. Then I said something I don't think I ever said to them before. I told them they made their choices and now I was making mine. They raised a son who never learned consequences, and they ignored the daughter who carried them all. I wasn't carrying them anymore. They didn't leave right away. My mom tried the guilt angle. My dad looked like he wanted to apologize, but couldn't find the words. Eric came in halfway through the conversation, took one look at the concierge scene, and simply asked, "What's going on?" My mom turned to him, full of nerves and manipulation, and said something about how we should be helping. Jake, like family, helps family. Eric, bless that man, just said, "You skipped your daughter's birthday for him. I think we're good here." They left not long after. After that, things got ugly. The messages became more desperate. Then came silence. And I thought maybe they'd figure it out. But of course, that's not how this works, because when someone is used to you carrying the weight, the moment you put it down, they think you're the problem. Then came the most ridiculous request I've ever received. A week later, my mom texted, "Jake needs stability. Maybe he could stay with you for a while, just until he gets back on his feet." I didn't even reply. I just showed Eric the message. He laughed, then said, "If he steps foot in this house, I'm calling the cops." We were done being the emergency exit for other people's poor decisions. But the story wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. Because Jake, he wasn't just irresponsible. He was getting reckless. And the next time I heard his name, it would be from a number I didn't recognize. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was already in a weird mood. Yayla had a meltdown about socks, and I was late to everything. I had just sat down with coffee that had gone cold when my phone rang. Unknown number. I hovered over it for a second, almost ignored it, then picked up. The voice on the other end was calm, clipped, professional. "This is Officer Delaney with the County Sheriff's Department. Is this Monica Reynolds?" I said yes. And the next sentence felt like it dropped the floor out from under me. "We have your brother, Jacob Reynolds, in custody." He explained Jake had been arrested for multiple counts of theft, money, property, fraud in one case. I didn't say anything. Just let the officer talk. He said they believed Jake had been stealing from people he knew, friends, roommates, even one of his exes, and pawning electronics tools. And in one case, jewelry that wasn't his to sell. And there was more. He'd been wiring money to online gambling platforms. He was in serious debt and had apparently started taking things just to cover his tracks. It wasn't petty. It was deliberate. Then came the part one half expected. "Would you be able to assist in any way? Bail? Legal counsel? Anything?" I said no. And when I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel surprised. Just hello. Like I was watching a movie I'd seen before and already knew how it ended. A few hours later, my mom called, this time. Her voice cracked before she even finished saying hello. She didn't bother pretending it was a check-in. He got straight to the point. Jake was in jail, and they needed help. Help with bail. Help with legal fees. Help with closcation, keeping him out of prison. He's not a bad kid, Monica. He just got lost. I reminded her he wasn't a kid anymore, that he'd had more chances than most people ever get, that every time they bailed him out, figuratively or literally, he sank deeper. Just needed someone to guide him. I said, "Then maybe you should have done that 10 years ago." Then came the guilt. My dad got on the line trying to sound rational. He said, "If we all pulled together, maybe this could be resolved quietly, that it would ruin Jake's life to have a felony on his record." He asked if Eric and I could maybe loan them a few thousand just until they got through this. I told them I wasn't spending a life single cent on Jake. I wasn't taking off work. I wasn't going to court. I wasn't doing anything. And I meant it, because for years they expected me to fix what Jake broke. I was the emotional glue, the financial backup plan, emergency contact for disasters I didn't cause. And when I needed them, They were busy with his car. Now, he traded that car in for a jail cell, and they were looking at me again. Like always, my mom said something I'll never forget. "How can you be so cold?" And I told her, something I don't think she expected to. "Here, you raced me to be this way. You made sure I knew I was on my own." Then I hung up. They didn't call back that day, but a week later, they tried again. This time, they weren't asking for money. They were asking for something even more absurd. My mom texted, "If you won't help with bail, maybe you could give a statement to the court about Jake's character, just so they know he has a good sister." I stared at that message for 10 minutes. A good sister? Where was the good mother when I needed one? Where was the good father when I turned 30 and asked for nothing but their time? Eric saw the text and didn't say a word. He just shook his head, and I could feel the heat rising in my chest. I didn't answer the message. 3 weeks later, Jake was sentenced. 2 years possibility of early release, but no promises. He cried in the courtroom. So did my parents. They said he was misunderstood, that he had made mistakes but didn't deserve this. I sat in the back, saying nothing, because the truth is, I had always been the one they turned to when everything else fell apart. But now, I wasn't there to catch them, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. Jake had been gone for 7 months when the first lie reached me. Came from someone I barely knew anymore, a girl named Ashley who used to date him back in high school. She messaged me out of the blue on Facebook asking if it was true that I had pulled strings to keep Jake out of state prison and got him a lighter sentence. I read the message 3 times before answering. I hadn't lifted a finger. I wasn't even in the courtroom when the sentence came down. Then 2 days later, an older woman from my parents' church group ran into me at the grocery store and said she was so proud of how I was keeping the family together. She told me my mom said I was covering Jake's lawyer fees and even helping my parents downsize into a smaller home. Mid-sentence, I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. They were rewriting history, making me the hero in a story I had no interest in being part of, because to admit the truth that they had ignored every warning sign, enabled every reckless move, and then lost control of the son they built up like a golden calf was too painful, too embarrassing. So they dragged my name into the fantasy instead. I didn't confront them. I didn't reply to the texts that started trickling in again, ones that carefully avoided Jake's name but were full of little questions like, "How's Laya?" and "We should visit. We soon." I knew what they were doing. They were testing the door to see if it was still unlocked. Moment. It was a Saturday morning when Eric walked into the kitchen holding his phone. He looked annoyed, confused, and a little amused. "They're here," he said. "Who's here?" "Your parents. They're in the driveway." I looked out the window, and sure enough, there they were, standing beside their car with 2 large suitcases and that familiar expression that said, "We're desperate, but pretending everything is fine." I didn't move. Eric opened the door and stepped outside before I could say anything. I watched from the kitchen as he spoke to them. My mom gestured toward the house. My dad stood silently, eyes low. After a minute, Eric shook his head. She started raising her voice. He didn't flinch. Eventually, he turned and walked back inside. They thought, could stay here, he said. I sat down at the table. I don't know how long I stared at the wall. Maybe 2 minutes, maybe 20. They weren't just visiting, they were trying to move in. Later, I found out they defaulted on one of the loans they took to pay off Jake's debts. They'd sold their car, refinanced their house twice, and were now facing foreclosure. They had nowhere else to go. And they assumed, just assumed, that I would catch them. It would have been so easy to let them in. I had the space. I had the money. I had the guilt. But I also had a husband who reminded me every day that I was not their doormat anymore. And a daughter who deserved to grow up in a house where love wasn't something you had to earn by solving everyone else's problems. That night, after they left, I got a text from my mom. I hope you never need help the way we need it now. I didn't answer. Then a few weeks later, the letter came. It was in Jake's handwriting, which I hadn't seen in years. 6 pages, rambling, fans, apologetic, angry, circular. He said he knew he'd messed up, that prison was not what movies make it look like, and that he was reevaluating his whole life. But what stuck with me was the last page. Mom and Dad said, you could probably help get me out early. Talk to someone. Use your job. I know you always figure stuff out. There was again the assumption, of course Monica will fix it mindset. Even from behind bars, I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and said nothing. Because old me, the one who bailed them out, who said yes, who made excuses, was gone. And what they hadn't realized yet was that the new me could live with silence. But karma hadn't finished yet. Close, because Jake's problems weren't over. And the next time my parents called, it wouldn't be about bail money or a place to stay. It would be something worse. Something they never saw coming. It was a cold Monday, December, when my mom finally broke the way. Silence. She left a voicemail, but her voice didn't sound like hers anymore. It was shaky, hollow, and barely above a noun whisper. Monica, something's happened with Jake. I didn't call back right away. I listened to it 3 times. Then put the phone down and went about my day. Eric noticed. He always notices. I didn't say anything until Leia was asleep. She said, something happened with Jake. I told him. Eric didn't ask me what I was going to do. He just said, do what's right, but don't set yourself on fire to keep them warm again. The next day, I called her. She answered. On the first ring, Jake had been caught in another scheme, inside prison. He'd convinced a few inmates to get involved in some kind of fake investment scam that targeted people on the outside. Using a smuggled phone, he'd been messaging women pretending to be someone else, promising fake returns on cryptocurrency, investments. One of the women traced it back, contacted the facility, and now Jake was facing new charges: fraud, wire, deception, and theft. He was going to be transferred. He'd likely face an extended sentence. This time it wasn't just jail. It was prison. Prison. Real time. Real consequences. And my parents, they were spiraling. My dad had started drinking again. My mom had apparently started selling off her jewelry to pay for consultations with private attorneys. Attorneys who wouldn't even take the case. "We don't know what to do," she said. "You stop pretending he's a victim," I answered. She didn't like that. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Not about money, not about lawyers. Something even more insane. "Can you talk to him? Maybe he'll listen to you now." I almost laughed. After everything, she still believed I was the one holding the magic switch that could fix Jake. But here's the thing. I agreed. Not for them. Not for Jake. For me. Facility. A week later. It was 3 hours, not including the security processing. I didn't tell my parents I was going. Eric didn't ask questions, just packed me snacks and told me to be careful. Jake looked older. He wasn't wearing the smug grin he used to wear like armor. There was a slump in his shoulders. Seen before. He looked up and said, "I knew you'd come." I didn't say anything at first. I just sat across from him and waited. He told me he didn't think things would get this bad. That he was just trying to make money. That he never meant to hurt anyone. I asked him why he kept doing the same thing, expecting different results. He shrugged, said something about pressure, expectations, fear. Then he said, "You'd help." And I told him the truth. I told him no one was coming to save him, that Mom and Dad couldn't even keep a roof over their heads anymore, that he had finally run out of shortcuts and excuses. Then I said something I didn't even plan on anymore. "But I'm done with you. You need to figure out who you are without breaking everyone else to get there." He nodded. Not like he agreed, just like he heard me. I left the visitation room and never looked back. A few months later, he was officially sentenced to 2 more years. No parole, no appeal, 2 full-up years for fraud and theft. My parents stopped updating me after that. They finally realized the only person who had ever held the family together wasn't interested in doing it anymore. But the strangest thing happened in the wide silence that followed. They changed. I didn't believe it at first, but what came next, I never saw coming. Spring when I saw them again. The trees were just starting to bloom, and Laya had begged to go to the park near the river. We were sitting on a bench, sharing a bag of pretzels when I looked up and saw 2 people standing near the entrance. My parents. I froze. They didn't wave or call out. There for a second, unsure if they should come closer. Laya saw them and waved before I could say anything, and slowly they made their way over. They looked smaller. Not physically, but in that way people looked when life has drained them of pride. My dad's coat was too big for him, and my mom's hands were trembling slightly as she tucked a Gallagher strand of hair behind her ear. They sat down on the opposite end of the bench. My mom was the first to speak. Come to ask for anything. That alone made me listen. She told me they had moved into a tiny rental an hour away, that they'd sold nearly everything they had to pay off what they could. They were in debt so deep they'd press us, probably never climb out of it. And then she said something I wasn't ready for. We failed you, and we failed him. I didn't say anything. My dad looked at Laya and said he was sorry for not being around more. Not just for her, but for me. He admitted they had placed Jake on a pedestal so high they couldn't see anyone else, especially me. Always thought you didn't need us because you never messed up. You never asked for anything, I said. Finally, I stopped asking because I learned the answer. We sat in silence for a while. Laya ran off to the swings. My mom watched her eyes, glassy. She turned back and said they'd started going to a local church group, not because they were trying to fix things through religion, but because it was the first place that didn't know who they used to be. They were learning to live with what they'd done, not erase it, not explain it away, just live with. Then, my mom asked quietly, could we be part of her life again? Not all at once, just maybe start over. It wasn't the graveling apology some people might imagine or hope for. It wasn't dramatic, but it was the first time in my life they looked at me and didn't expect something in return. And that meant something. I told them they could visit, that we take it slow, that I wasn't promising anything permanent, but I was willing to see if something real could be and be built. Over the next few months, they came by once or twice a week. Nothing big. Just an hour here, a quick lunch there. My mom brought over cookies she'd made from a recipe she used to make when I was a kid. My dad helped Eric repair a Mayast leaky pipe. They started trying and I didn't stop them. Then, surprisingly, Dake started writing again, not asking for help. Just writing honest letters, apologizing, telling stories about what he was doing inside, books he was reading. How he'd started helping in the dough kitchen, how he finally got sober. He never asked for money, never asked for anything, actually. And that's what made the letters feel different. Like maybe, for once, he was growing up the hard way, but growing up all the same. By the time Jake hit the 1-year mark, my parents had changed enough that even Eric stopped rolling his eyes when they visited. Laya started calling them Grandma and Grandpa again. Edges softened. There's no perfect bow on this story. My parents are still rebuilding, and Jake still has a long road ahead of him. But the truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about deciding to stop letting other people's mistakes define you. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like the forgotten daughter. I feel like someone they finally saw, and that's a start. It's strange how life gets quiet when the noise you're used to finally dies down. 6 months after Jake was sentenced again, everything around me started to settle. The tension that used to hum beneath everything, every dinner, every phone call, every holiday, just stopped. Not overnight, but gradually, like dust finally starting to settle in. A room that had been shaking for years. My parents still live in the tiny, 2-bedroom rental an hour away. It's not the house I grew up in. That place is long gone, foreclosed, sold, stripped down. But they keep this one clean, tidy. They budget. They cook. Argue less. They come over sometimes, but they never assume. They ask first. They don't show up with bags anymore, or expect to be fed or entertained. They bring snacks for Wyla, help clean up, and then they go home. It's not warm and fuzzy. Not like a Hallmark movie. It's real, and that's worth more than any apology they could have fumbled through. My mom calls once a week now. Sometimes she tells me about the older woman next door who feeds the stray cats. Other times, she just asks what Yila's into these days. She listens when I talk, and for the first time in my life, she doesn't turn the conversation back to Jake. That shift. It's something I still catch myself questioning, like I'm waiting for them to slip. But 6 months later, they haven't. They've stopped pretending Jake's issues were anyone else's fault. My dad especially has changed the most. He used to go quiet. When things got hard, checked out, disappeared behind his silence. But now, he talks slowly, simply. He even told me once that I was right to walk away. You were the only one thinking clearly, he said. I just wasn't ready to hear it. Jake writes every few weeks. The first few letters felt stiff, like he didn't know how to be honest yet. But they've gotten better, more grounded, less excuses. He told me he finally got his GD and started helping other inmates in the library. He's still facing time, but, he said, it's the first time he's actually stopped long enough to figure out who he is without pretending. Last letter, he wrote something that stuck with me. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope someday you'll believe I meant it when I say I was proud to be your brother, even when I was a mess. I haven't written back yet. I'm not ready. But I haven't thrown the letters away either. Eric's been steady through all of it. I think he's relieved, more than anything. Not just that my parents have changed, but that I finally gave myself permission to stop fixing everything. He told me recently, you were surviving for so long, you didn't even know what peace felt like. He was right. I started doing little things I used to love, but had let go of. Reading late at night, sketching, playing music while cooking with Wyla. I joined a book club. I stopped checking my phone every time it buzzed, afraid it was another crisis. I live slower now, more intentionally. Laya doesn't know everything. One day she might, but for now, she just knows that her grandparents visit sometimes, and her uncle is away for a while. She doesn't ask too many questions. Kids sense when things are complicated, but they don't always need the details. The truth is, we're not the same family we were a year ago, and thank God for that. We're scarred, but not broken. Humbled, still here. And maybe that's all any of us can hope for after years of pretending things were okay when they weren't. So when my mom hugs me now, don't flinch. When my dad thanks me for dinner, I don't brush it off. And when I look at my life, this quiet, rebuilt, imperfect life, I don't feel bitterness anymore. Freedom. And that's more than I ever thought I'd